We have explained several times the importance of awakening the consciousness. But what is this consciousness? What does it mean to have an awakened consciousness? How can we awaken this consciousness, this precious pearl inside us?
Could you please explain to us about consciousness? What is it? What is its role in our life?
People confuse intelligence with intellect and say that a very intelligent or very intellectual person is very conscious. We say that the consciousness is a very particular type of apprehension of inner knowledge that is wholly independent of all mental activities. The faculty of consciousness allows us to reach the knowledge of ourselves. Consciousness provides us with an integral knowledge of what is, of where it is, of what is really known, of what is certainly not known. The revolutionary psychology teaches that only man himself can get to know himself. Man himself and nobody else but he can realize in an instant, in a moment, that he was not really conscious, that his consciousness was fast asleep. He will later either forget this experience or keep it as a memory, as the memory of a powerful experience. It is urgent to know that the consciousness in the rational animal is not something continuous, permanent. Usually, the consciousness in the intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, is fast asleep. The moments when the consciousness is awakened are rare, very rare. The intellectual animal works, drives a car, gets married, dies, etc., with a fully asleep consciousness. And only in very exceptional moments does he awaken. The human being's life is a dream life, but he believes he is awakened and would never admit that he is dreaming, that his consciousness is asleep. The old wise men from the sacred land of the Vedas were not mistaken when they said that this world is Maya, illusion. Ah, if only those poor people stopped dreaming, how different would life be?
How can we know in any moment that our consciousness is awake or asleep?
When a human being admits that his consciousness is asleep, you can be sure that he is already starting to awaken. Those who confuse the consciousness with psychological functions, thoughts, feelings, motor impulses, and sensations are really very unconscious. They sleep very soundly. Those who admit the existence of the consciousness, but flatly deny the different conscious degrees, reveal the lack of conscious experience, a sleep of the consciousness. Every person who has at least once momentarily awakened knows very well by personal experience that different degrees of observable consciousness exist in oneself. First, time. How long did we remain conscious? Second, frequency. How many times have we awakened consciousness? Third, extent and penetration. What was one conscious of? 10 or 15 years of study in school, college, and university are of no use if when leaving the classrooms we are sleeping robots. It is not an exaggeration to say that through a great effort, the intellectual animal can be conscious of himself for just a couple of minutes. It is clear that there usually are rare exceptions that we must seek with Diogenes' lantern. Such rare cases are represented by the authentic men: Buddha, Jesus, Hermes, Quetzalcoatl, etc. These founders of religions possessed continuous consciousness. They were great enlightened individuals. Normally, people are not conscious of themselves. The illusion of being conscious in a continuous manner is born from the memory and all the thinking processes. A man who practices a retrospective exercise to remember his entire life can truly recall. Remember the number of times he married, how many children he had, who his parents and his teachers were, etc. But this does not mean awakening the consciousness. This is simply remembering unconscious actions, and that's all. The intellectual animal firmly believes that he is conscious of his self, and under no circumstances would he accept to be told that he is asleep. There are exceptional moments when the intellectual animal awakens, but these moments are very rare. They can occur in an instant of great danger, during an intense emotion, in some new circumstance, in some new unexpected situation, etc. The revolutionary psychology has methods, scientific processes to awaken consciousness. If we want to awaken consciousness, we need to begin by examining, studying, and then eliminating all the obstacles that appear on our path.
What are these obstacles that appear in our path? What can prevent us from awakening our consciousness?
The first obstacle is the current state in which we are. People only have 3% of awakened consciousness and 97% of sleeping consciousness. Whoever wants to feel the great realities of the inner worlds, whoever wants to achieve the awakening of the consciousness, has to decide to die from instant to instant. That is indispensable. It is urgent to know that we have a pluralized I within ourselves. Such I is the Seth of Egyptian mythology, a whole of red devils, as the ancient priest from the Pharaoh's land said. These subterranean entities, which personify the ego or Seth, are the biological profile of our own defects. Our consciousness is bottled up within each of those entities. It is trapped, imprisoned, and asleep. So our consciousness acts depending on its own bottling. It definitely moves along a wrong way. Unfortunately, it is egotistic. If we want to awaken, it is necessary to totally destroy Seth, the ego, the red devils, the eyes. Only in that way can the consciousness become emancipated, liberated, and radically awakened. The second obstacle is that there are countless pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist schools and books. There are a lot of such schools and authors everywhere, fighting one another. Some authors tell us that breathing exercises are fantastic, but others say that they are harmful. Some people say one thing, but some other people say a different thing. Each school boasts that it has the truth. Most people get lost amongst the labyrinth of so many theories, so many schools, of so many confusions. What can we do to orientate ourselves? Obviously, we should be interested in the awakening of the consciousness. Only thus can we walk successfully inside that mysterious labyrinth. But as long as we have not awakened, we shall be confused. Some people even become enthusiastic about these studies for a moment, and then they leave them. There are people with their heads full of theories who think that they have already discovered the secret way, though they are actually sound asleep. It seems incredible, but there are masters of the Grand White Lodge, radically awakened people, totally self-realized, and yet they cannot read or write. They are absolutely illiterate. but they are self-realized and awakened. On the other hand, we see on the way of life inside different schools, organizations, orders, etc. People with their heads full of theories, individuals with rich erudition, but whose consciousness is completely asleep. Those are learned ignoramuses, who are not only ignorant, but even worse, they are ignorant of their own ignorance. However, when questioned, they certainly do show a surprising erudition and a brilliant mind, with sharp, conclusive, and definitive proverbs. But what is all that good for? First of all, we need to awaken in order to know how to orientate ourselves. Of what use would it be to have our heads filled with letters if our consciousness is still asleep? We had better be illiterate, but with an awakened consciousness. We need to learn how to live, my dear friends, because it happens that we, human beings, do not know how to live, and that is a very serious question. We do not measure time. We think that this physical body will last for an eternity, when in reality, it hardly lasts for a little while, and then it turns into dust.
Interesting. Could you please tell us the way to awaken then? How can we get out from this sleep of our consciousness?
When a person gets to fully comprehend that he cannot remember himself, that he is not conscious of himself, he is then very close to awakening consciousness. We need to reflect very seriously over this. What we are saying here is of great importance, and it cannot be comprehended if we listen to it mechanically. Our listeners must reflect on this. People are unable to feel their own I while observing themselves. They are unable to pass it from one center to another, etc. In order to awaken consciousness, we must observe the way we speak, laugh, walk, etc., without forgetting ourselves and while feeling the I inside. This is a difficult but fundamental step. There exists a 97% of subconsciousness and a 3% of consciousness within us. In other words, we say that a 97% of consciousness is asleep, and that there's only 3% of awakened consciousness. However, there are people who do not reach 3% of wakeful consciousness. They usually have 2%, and there are individuals with only 1%. But if we tell such a thing to those people whose consciousness is sleeping, they would not believe it. They would rather take offense. It is necessary to awaken, and in order to achieve so, we should first of all sincerely accept that we are all asleep. That is something very similar to a madman who is mad. No madman accepts that he is mad. All madmen believe they are all right. When a madman accepts that he is mad, that is an unmistakable sign that he is getting better. The same happens with people who have their consciousness asleep. They do not accept that they are asleep. But when they accept it, that is an unmistakable sign that they are starting to awaken. Nevertheless, it is not a question of accepting it intellectually. No, anyone may say mechanically, yes, I am asleep. But being conscious of one's own sleep is quite a different thing. There is therefore a great difference between the intellect and the consciousness. But how can we achieve such awakening? Obviously, we already know that the basic thing is dissolving the ego. That is unquestionable. But of course, we must help ourselves through different methods or procedures. I am going to explain to you a technique. It is necessary to divide the attention into 3 parts. 1. Subject. 2. Object or objects. 3. Place. Subject. We must not forget ourselves. We must watch ourselves at every second, at every moment. This implies living in a state of alert in regard to our thoughts, gestures, actions, emotions, habits, words, etc. When you forget yourself, you make very serious mistakes in life. For instance, if we forget ourselves before a drink of wine, we would not only drink a glassful, but we may also have many others and get drunk. What would happen if we forget ourselves before a person of the opposite sex? We could become fornicators or adulterers, couldn't we? Therefore, it is indispensable not to forget ourselves. When we say not to forget oneself, what are we referring to? We mean that we must self-observe our feelings, our inner impulses, our sorrows, our emotions, our instincts, our habits, etc. We must watch our senses and our mind, because if we do not control our senses and our mind, our consciousness falls asleep. Object. We must carefully observe all the objects or representations that come to mind through the senses. This is the second aspect of the key. For example, if you see a beautiful object, a suit, a ring, a perfume, a shop window, anything, but you are enchanted by that object you are seeing, what always happens is that your consciousness falls asleep. Why? Because you forgot yourself. When you see the object, you identify with it, and the poor consciousness falls sound asleep. We need to observe what surrounds us, the things which surround us, without being fascinated with them. It is urgent to comprehend that we must never forget ourselves. A car may be very smart and fast. A film may be very exciting. A house may be very luxurious. Yes, but why should we forget ourselves? Why? Usually, when we see the objects around us, there is a process of sleepiness. Let us see. First, identification. You forget yourself and identify with an object. A hypnotic force grasps the senses and directs all our attention towards that place. Then you say, "How beautiful, how nice, how fine it is." Second, fascination. You are fascinated by the object. If it is a fine suit, you say, "This color is the one which matches best with me. How smart I would be with it. If I had money, I would buy it," etc., etc. Third, sleep. Such a state of strong attraction, seduction, and dazzling produces a sopor or drowsiness in us, which undoubtedly leads to a sound sleep of the consciousness. Then you start dreaming in a grand manner of that suit, of the party where we would wear it for the first time, of the beautiful girl we would show it to, etc. Forgetting yourself is a mistake with incalculable consequences. It always results in fascination and sleep. It is impossible to awaken our consciousness if we forget ourselves, if we identify with something, place. Finally, you must watch every place in a careful way, even the well-known places. The drawing room, the bedroom. We must watch them as if they were something new. Wherever you go, the first thing you must say to yourself is, "Well, why am I here? What do I have to do with this place? Why have I come to this place, to this market, to this office, to this temple, etc.? This is indispensable if you want to awaken consciousness, not only here, but also in the superior worlds. It might happen that we really were in the fourth or fifth dimension of nature during the moment of observation. Remember that nature has 7 dimensions. Within the 3-dimensional world, the law of gravitation reigns. Within the superior dimensions of nature, there exists the law of levitation. When we observe a place, we must never forget the question, of the 7 dimensions of nature. It is then convenient to ask yourself, in which dimension am I? And then, with the purpose of verifying the matter, it is necessary to make the longest possible jump with the intention of floating in the surrounding place. It is logical that if we are floating, that means we are outside the physical body. In order to do this division of attention exercise properly, you must practice it from second to second, from instant to instant, until it becomes a habit. Till one day you do it instinctively. It will then happen that such an exercise, which has been practiced during wakefulness, will be so firmly registered in the subconscious that it will work automatically afterwards, during sleep hours. You must have perfectly seen that many times you dream of events which have happened to you during the day. It may also happen that you have a great worry and dream of it at night. Once we are conscious of this aspect of the mind, it is convenient to practice this exercise intensively. When you get used to doing such an exercise, it repeats automatically during sleep hours. It is convenient to know that during sleep hours, the soul, or more accurately, the psyche, our consciousness, bottled up amongst the ego, finds itself outside the physical body. You live there in the same way as you do in the physical world, but you really do not realize where you are. If you do the exercise just then, the result is the awakening of the consciousness. When you awaken, you may go to any place on earth. You may go to the temples of mysteries. You may invoke ineffable beings, talk face to face with them, receive direct instructions from the grand masters.
So is this the discipline we must follow to awaken the consciousness? What pitfalls must students avoid in order to awaken the consciousness?
The most important thing is not to identify oneself with the circumstances of existence. Life is like a film, and in fact, it is a film which has a beginning and an end. Different scenes pass upon the screen of mind, and our most serious mistake consists in identifying with those scenes. Why? These scenes will pass because they just pass. They are scenes of a great film, and they eventually pass. You worry so much about a great problem you have, which you do not know how to solve. And then it already passes, and a completely different scene arrives. Then why should we worry? If it had to pass, what was the purpose of getting worried? People completely forget themselves. They forget their own profound inner being. That is why they identify with circumstances.